in you guys talking about your experience in the sacramental practices, because all of you have experience. All of you have done a lot in different ways. So my reflections on the sacraments are not going to be theology only. I am choosing a path proposed by the Spanish Conference of Bishops, and I really like this path. They do their sacraments more towards the celebration of them. I mean, they go through the theology of the sacrament, but it's not like you have to learn what sacramental character is, and And of course, some of you already know it, and if you don't know it, we'll get you materials for that and all of that. That's important. But the Spanish bishops, and it took me a long time to just pick and choose what I wanted to do for you, because I could go back and do the traditional stuff, but then you're reading it in the catechism anyway. So why do we go through the catechism again? The catechism is already good. Sometimes it's too good. Okay. A little. How can I say this? A little something about the catechism. Don't use your catechism as your starting point for anything. Okay? The catechism was not meant to be the starting point of anything. It's supposed to be the arriving point. Okay? So it's not your departure airport. It's your arrival airport. Okay? Treat it like that because people are not familiar with the catechism. People are not familiar with the language or anything. You are, because you're going through it. And it's very nice because it's you know who was the one who put together the catechism, right? Joseph Ratzinger. So it's as good as it gets. He said the other day he wasn't very happy with it, but I know why he's saying that, because no theologian is happy with anything. They all want to improve it and fix it and deepen the reflections and So I know my little German bishop is not happy with it. He will never be happy with it, but it's very good. It's very dense sometimes, but what can we do? We have to be very, very precise in the language. But don't use it as your starting point for anything, okay? If you want to use something for the starting point, use the compendium of the catechism. I'm sure you're familiar with it, the little one. The one that is questions and answers, okay? Which is the compendium of the big one. You know, do you have it? Do you guys have the compendium?
I got a copy.
You have yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little book, and it's really good. Yeah, that you can use as your starting point. That little one.
Oh, okay.
Editrice Vaticana. Yeah, because that is a simpler catechism. And so, like, let us say that one day Jeremy has an emergency baptismal talk, and he didn't have time to put together the super duper slideshow that he was going to do. And all you want to do is make copies of that and give it to the sponsors and the parents, and just go through it. It's complete. It's really good. Okay? But don't use the catechism, because the catechism will be too much. Okay? Use that for yourself. Okay? And use it as a sounding board. You know, am I saying what I'm supposed to say or not? And be very careful, because you're going to find, especially when you go out into ministry and stuff, you will find articles and commentaries and suggestions about sacramental practices and stuff, but they will have a little agenda. And you need to be very mindful of that, because when you make your profession of faith, which is the very last thing you're going to do, you know, it's going to be at the retreat, you're going to make it to the bishop. You're going to promise to God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit that what you're going to be teaching is the doctrine of the church, never your own. Okay, so you have to be very careful. Okay, that what you say, even though of course it's going to be your own, because you're a believer and you're teaching it, but be very careful not to make it what you like, but rather what the church teaches. I'm letting go an RCIA teacher in my parish. She spends more time talking about the senators of Utah than Jesus Christ in RCIA. Now, I need my kids and 2 of them are my godchildren, I need my kids to fall in love with Jesus Christ. Not to write letters to the senator. I mean, if they want to, but it's not about that. That's an example of an agenda. Or sometimes, like, there will be, like, we'll go through this today. It will be like, well, Father so-and-so made a mistake when he said the words of consecration. Maybe what we had for communion was not the body of God. Some people come out of RCIA thinking like that. Okay? Of course we make mistakes. I'm going to be 17 years a priest this April. I've made two mistakes pronouncing the words of consecration. By the way, believe it or not, in Espanol. In English, I say what I'm supposed to say. Rosie understands. Because we put our minds, when we are speaking in another language, we put our minds and our souls into what we're doing. Because we have to get it right. Yeah. You get tired at the end of the day, right? And so, what does the priest do in that case? Well, in secret, when he is genuflecting, he says the words again. And that does it. That makes it the body of Christ. Period. Okay? And then there is a principle, and you all guys have heard about it, I'm sure. It's omnia suppled ecclesia. Everything can be fixed, so to say, by the faith of the church. Okay? So if you make a mistake, it's not going to be like, oh, I made a mistake when I was reading the gospel, so maybe the reading wasn't valid. No. Most of the gospels are already well known by everybody. You made a mistake, so what? The Holy Spirit just laughed at you and said, "Oh, I got this defective instrument." That's how Benedict XVI used to call himself. I'm a defective instrument. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so super careful about that. Well, our discussion about sacraments today is going to go in that direction. It's about not the theology so much. There will be theology, of course, but how do we get to the celebration of the sacraments? Okay? Because that is exactly what you are going to be doing. And believe it or not, your spouses will learn this better than yourselves. And they are going to be assisting you, I'm sure, at the altar, or assisting you preparing the baptism, and they will remind you of this. No, wait. It's the catechumen's oils first, not the chrism, things like that. Okay, so that's amazing. That's going to be very, very good. A little introduction. Sacraments are the most important actions in the church. They are. So what's the main thing that we do in church? We preach the Word of God and we celebrate the sacraments. In that order, though. It's the announcement of the kerygma, the good news of the salvation Jesus Christ has brought to us through His life, death, and resurrection, which translates later into the sacramental celebration. Yeah, that is the most important we do in church. Okay? And it has to have that priority, okay? You guys have to be very careful. People have to notice that the most important thing that we do in church is our sacramental celebrations, okay? So that is a given. For many, they're ID as good Catholics. Are you receiving the sacraments? Okay? So there's this guy, he's engaged. We're renting him a little space in the church. And his girlfriend from Zacatecas, Mexico, calls him, they talk every day. But on Sunday afternoon, evening, this is the question. Did you receive communion today, my dear? What does that mean? That he's behaving, he's not with other girls, he's not in the state of mortal sin, he is good. That's what it means. He didn't look at it that way. Oh, she's so interested in me. Yeah, she is, but she's checking on you. That question gives her, it's a barcode. Of course. And the guy goes like, really? Yeah, that's what she means, huh? And she's a catechist over there, so she knows this kind of well, and so, yeah, so that's how you do it. You just ask your children, right? Did you receive communion today, honey? No, Mom. What did you do? So that's how we use it. In many parishes, sacraments are what occupies priests the most, right? There are some parishes that are purely sacramental, Sacred Heart. St. Peter and Paul not so much. Guadalupe, okay? I mean, come on. We're having a crisis at Sacred Heart right now. I have couples, begging for a cancellation from quinceañera so they can get married. Because there's no space. We're booked till November, till Thanksgiving Day. Yeah. And we get booked a year in advance. Yeah, ¿qué pasa?
Do you let the quinceañeras take precedence over that?
Whoever comes first.
Oh,
Yeah,
first come, first served?
Yeah,
I'm
we
just
can't
gonna,
do
I'm
it.
gonna ask the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
You have a sacrament versus a.
Yeah. The quinceañera is nothing, I know. It's like, Dios mío,
But with the same token, you can't bump them because they.
No, and also quinceañeras could be a very good opportunity for evangelization.
Yeah.
I mean, I use them for that. I preach to the girl, I talk to the girl. I don't preach to the assembly so much. I get the boys and the girls accompanying involved and stuff. She proclaims her own readings. I stole that from the Jews. In the bar mitzvah, the kid gets up and reads it. Oh, well, now my girls get up and read the reading from.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
and the psalm, and the flowers stand over here, and the photographer goes crazy. Mama llora, Yeah, but of course, the sacraments should have precedence. Sacred Heart is beginning to function as a shrine. So we're not getting our parishioners; we're getting somebody else's parishioners all the time. West Valley, West Jordan.
So what's the downfall of that? Is it just that you as the priest are so busy? Or
The-
what's the downfall?
We'll go to that
Okay.
here. We discussed this, and this could get very serious if we don't do it right.
Yeah.
Boom, we kill the sacraments. You've seen it. I'm sure you have seen that. The amount of sacraments is used to differentiate between a good and a bad parish. Okay, you haven't heard the priests when they get together, but that's what they boast about. Oh, I had so many weddings this summer. How many, dude? 5. Oh, good for you. Yeah.
You had 5 one weekend.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't say anything. No, but then I get in trouble because you're supposed to say only so many masses, right, a day. 3
Yeah.
at the most and 5 with permission. Well, my criteria is 5 at the most and 7 with permission. I never say 3. I always, even during the week, if I have a funeral, that's 3. If I have 2 funerals, then that's 5. It goes like that. What do you do? I learned that very early in my ministry when I was ordained a priest. That weekend I said 10 masses. I was ordained on Saturday morning. By Monday morning, I had already said 10 masses plus my own ordination. Yeah, I was like, see, I run out of Holy Spirit,
So, Father,
Yes.
is that violating canon law?
Yeah, it is violating canon law.
And there's no consequence for violating canon law?
Oh yeah, the bishop can punish you because you're going beyond what you're supposed to. And there is a reason for that, Greg. It's because if you do that, sometimes the celebration of the sacrament that you do you lose interest. You could make it lose a mechanical celebration, Yeah. So you have to be super careful to not to go there unless you have like a very serious pastoral need. Okay. Sometimes it will happen. You are in Utah, so at one point there will be a pastor here and there that was gonna fall ill, and you will get a phone call from Bob Hardy. Could you please go to Richfield and fill in for Father, and it's gonna be 5 celebrations. You have to go. That's a pastoral emergency, and we'll have to do it. Of course, the ideal is not to do that. Okay, like you have a number of hours to flight, right? If you fly more than that, you're no good. Okay, and she notices. Anyway, it's serious. It's a very serious thing, the other day, Bishop Solis, and I love this, when nobody was looking, he took me apart and he said, how many masses do you say on the weekend? And of course I told him the truth. Well, Bishop, sometimes I say 7, 8, sometimes 10, you know. You do everything by yourself? Yes. Do you have help? No. He didn't say anything. Bishop Wester used to fry me, but Bishop Solis didn't say anything. I mean, I think he was trying to get the picture of the parish, to see what we do and how much work we have. Okay?
What would Bishop Wester say?
Oh, quote the code of canon law. You know how you're supposed to say 3, no more than that. I said, Bishop, but then who's gonna marry your couples? The Mormon bishop? He would be very happy to do it.
Yeah.
But,
You
yeah.
have to serve your congregation.
It's a dilemma. You get into that dilemma. So it's important that you know how to juggle with that and try to keep us as faithful as you can to the criterion of the church, because it's really is true. You lose interest. You do a mechanical celebration, you know? Yeah. Anyway, for some this constitutes a real problem. When we read the Gospels, we notice that religious practices were not as important as they are for priests nowadays. Jesus wasn't that concerned with religious practices. I mean, he had his religion, he's a Jew. He's the best Jew ever, of course. But he was not like the Pharisees, like, no. It was pretty much a very free idea of the religious practices. He had a perfect religion. He trusted in God to the point that he realized as a human being that he's what he was, that God is his true father. I mean, that is true religion. But the religious practices were not as important. And sometimes Jesus has problems with the Pharisees and with his own disciples because they are over religious. Okay? I have the same problem sometimes. You know, sometimes my people, my congregation are over religious, and I go like, okay, I don't want to scandalize them, but they're overdoing it. Well, God bless them. You know?
Give me an example of them overdoing it.
For example, I won't have like a solemn rosary every now and then, or something like that. We do have rosaries when we have novenas, and we have a rosary before every mass, but I don't overdo it. We have the rosary. I don't have all kinds of devotions because the church can only accommodate so much, so we cannot do everything, you know, so you know. And plus, I told you about this before, I come from the Liberation Theology movement, so we hardly prayed anything. We read the Bible. We celebrated the Eucharist, but that was it. It's a very specific, you know. In fact, when my mom sees me nowadays, she was like, what is wrong with you? No, nothing, Mom. You're praying the rosary. Yeah, Mom, I'm a priest.
Okay.
They don't. They rather read the gospel. So that's the way they do it. Okay. Anyway, okay. And then the whole mentality, like this is holy, this is not, this is. You know that we only have 2 sacred objects in the church, right? The chalice and the paten. The rest of them are blessed and they're dedicated to God, but holy, sacred, only those 2, and the altar that is consecrated. That's it. Well, we're a very simple religion in that regard. The chalice and the paten, because the body of blood of Christ, take place there, and the altar, because it is consecrated by the bishop, is dedicated by the bishop with the holy oil and everything. Have you guys been at a dedication of the church? You will, because you will serve one day. And were you at yours? Yeah. So that, and you saw that, right? They anoint the altar with chrism, and they offer the incense from there for the first time, and they anoint the crosses on the church, and that's amazing. It's a beautiful celebration. It's a beautiful liturgy. Yeah, but not that many things. We're very simple, actually.
So not the tabernacle, or?
No, the tabernacle is a container. But the ciborium, yeah. Yeah, and of course the Blessed Sacrament, well, that's God. It's out of the question. But it's only the chalice and the pen. Okay? Yeah. So, and even the little chalices that we use, the auxiliary chalices that we use for communion of the faithful, those are sacred. Because there's the wine is poured in there, and that Transubstantiation takes place there. So you don't grab them like this. No, they're not cups, they're chalices. That's little by little.
So when you say patent, Father, but you're also including support.
It's a boy, which is another form.
Right.
Patent, yeah. Anyway, Jesus did not establish a temple for his followers to attend and worship. No, he didn't. In fact, he didn't like the temple too much. He wasn't in agreement with the temple. He celebrated Easter where? Outside. And then he celebrated Easter not on the official date of Easter because he didn't follow the temple calendar. He celebrated Easter before, 2 days before. And actually when the lamb was being sacrificed at the temple, that's when he was being crucified. There was a little bit of a conflict there, with the temple.
Yeah, I can talk to you about that one day. That's different. John has one idea, and didn't the Synoptic Gospels have?
A different idea, yeah, but it's not, Jesus is not a fan of the temple. And even when he goes to the temple in St. John, especially in St. John, and he drives out the merchants, it's not because they were doing unholy things. It's because the temple was being used to divide people between the holy ones and the not holy ones, the pure-blooded ones, and that's what makes him angry in John. Okay, in the Synoptic Gospels, it is that he's driving out the merchants, but so his relationship with the temple is not the official relationship of a Jew of his time. No, it's different. Right? It's amazing to see that. There are books that discuss that Jesus did not make his disciples follow specific religious practices. No. In fact, when you see the Last Supper and you see how he did it, the Last Supper was rehearsed. There were other meals before, with Lazarus, with his other friends, with Nicodemus. Jesus had those gatherings. Jesus had those meals. Not exactly Easter, not exactly the Passover, the Pesach, but he had those meals with his friends. So when the moment comes for the Last Supper, they already know what to do. They already know how to do it. And when he tells them, do this in memory of me, he meant that. He meant get together, be friends to one another, serve one another, and remember me. And I will be with you until the end of times. So it's not so much a religious practice, it borders with a more human practice, which has a complete religious dimension, of course, because it's the Son of God who's commanding you to do that. But the way he does it is not like, here's the Roman Missal and here's the rubrics. No. Get together, do this in memory of me. I love that. The anamnesis, that's the name of the phrase, when he commands us to do that. That's where holy orders come from. We get ordained in the church because Jesus commanded us to do what he did. So that's how he instituted the sacrament of holy orders, because there needs to be somebody to do this in memory of him. So we have the bishops, the priests, and the deacons to do that in memory of him. But it's not defined. It's not rubrics. Okay? So that doesn't mean that we're going to have a party at Mass and we're going to do Mass at the beach and use a napkin and crackers. And
What about a wedding on a plane?
you can.
I mean, that's the Pope did, and I thought it was cool, but.
Oh, he can.
Because he can't.
Took some meat for that, didn't it?
No, in the explanation he gave,
Yeah.
he said, I sensed that they were ready.
That was it.
Holy Father, you can do anything. Yeah.
How lucky the couple was.
The smile on their faces was like, they're going to get a certificate from the Diocese of Rome.
Wow.
And when it's, witnessed by, Francis, Supreme Pontiff of the Roman Church. Okay. Does it get any more official than that?
Better never get divorced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think so. They really looked
Better
very
have 12
much
children.
Yeah, wow, yeah. Because they wanted to have a celestial wedding, so that's how they did it up in the sky, anyway. In Spanish, the word heaven and the word sky is the same, cielo. We don't have a different word. So it's a celestial wedding officially. Yeah, anyway. I didn't look much into it, but he got criticized, but he's a Latin American bishop, and he is just a Latin American bishop, and that's what a Latin American bishop would do. They're not as official and as formal as the North American bishops or the European bishops. They're a little bit freer than that, so so that's okay. Yeah, he's the Pope. Of course, all this is debatable. You get people going back and forth about it. But in the present moment, we find Christians that reject the sacramental life of the church very strongly. It is something that we find in our own family sometimes, Well, I'm going to wait for the baby to grow up and then I will baptize him. Grow up to what? 30? It's a rejection of the sacramental life of the church. The person is telling you it's no longer meaningful to me. The baby is born, but I don't care if it is born to the church. It's born in my family and I gave him a name already. He's my child and my spouse's child, but that's it. It's a rejection of sacramental life. It's saying, the sacrament of baptism is not that relevant to me. Okay? Yeah, and we are to blame in part. See?
When we went to Congress, I'm sure some of you went to that same speaker. It was a priest from back east somewhere, and he said that parents who say, "Oh, I'm going to let them choose their own religion," it's just like a parent saying, "Well, I'm going to let them choose their own language."
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Their own
it
culture,
doesn't
their
make
own
any
gender,
sense.
their own... no, you don't entrust a 3-year-old with what he or she is
Yeah.
going to eat. So why should you entrust them when deciding which religion they're going to follow? It's
Yeah.
irresponsible.
He said, yeah, that's what he said, that was really irresponsible
Oh,
for parents to do.
Big time. Yeah, irresponsible. It's very irresponsible. Some view sacraments as obsolete rituals that have no meaning for the present generation. So why should I do that? And the other day this atheist couple comes, and they said, I'm officially atheist, and they were from Europe. But I feel that I need to baptize my children. I need my child to start somewhere. That's what they said. We got them good sponsors. They were baptized.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Okay? Because it was the other way around. These were people that didn't receive any sacraments, but they felt the need. My child needs to start somewhere, and I want my child to start here. That's a good way of asking for baptism, isn't it? Maybe it's not that sufficient, but it's a good way to start. Yeah.
Feed them
Okay.
milk.
Yeah. Or the other way around. You find the grandmother that is so concerned about the spiritual well-being of her grandchildren, and she comes and says, I want to baptize my grandchildren. So what do the parents say? Because you cannot baptize them without the parents' consent. And say, they don't care. They say that if I baptize them, it's going to be my responsibility. Are you willing to raise them Catholic? Father, I will. You baptize them. Because they have somebody to teach them the faith. Somebody who actually cares and knows it. So, we also have problems because others view sacraments as ritual actions through which we can manipulate God. This is very serious. Okay? And so sometimes you get people that come to celebrate their sacraments because then if I do this, then God will give me that, or God will get me that, and whew, that's serious. That is treating the sacraments as magic, and that's not correct. And you see that a lot.
Confirmation.
Huh?
Confirmation, that reminds me of confirmation for kids.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really want it, but if they've got the certificate,
Yeah.
regardless of what's in their heart, they're
Yeah.
confirmed.
Yeah. Still, some others view them as actions aimed to dominate, so clergy would remain removed and above the rest of the faithful. And sometimes we are to blame, we clergy, because sometimes we do that. Okay, so you cannot have a sacrament without me. So it's under my conditions. It's whenever I say so. It's and the stipend, of course, I tell you how much to give me, and Holy Mother of Jesus Christ, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Because you're not encountering the risen Lord at that baptism. You are being manipulated by this crazy priest. And that is not fair. And that is not Christian. Okay? Now, I wanted to go this path with you because you guys are going to be celebrating sacraments all the time. And you need to make sure that this doesn't happen to you. Okay? It is evident that the reasoning behind these ideas is wrong, but still, the young generation prefers to avoid the sacraments, avoid religion, and avoid the church at all, because it has become meaningless to them, or irrelevant to them, or because we have not explained ourselves sufficiently or in the proper way. Okay? Because on the other hand, you get these very serious youngsters that want to know the church, that want to know the faith, that go to confession every 3 weeks, that make us priests crazy, but it's beautiful. Okay? Okay? So I have one that right now we are in the middle of a big discussion, and he's progressing, and I love this. And I tell the guy, remember, it's not your relationship with God, it's his relationship with you. You don't choose your king. The king chooses you. Yes, yes, Father. Yes, but it's so hard. But we're going in that direction with him, and it's amazing. And the kid is 19. And he's so worried because he's not saying his prayers the way he should. Yeah. And then I'm trying to teach him, we Catholics don't do things because we have to. We're not Protestants. We do things because we want to, because we love God so much and loved us first, that we want to, we need to. Okay. So I went to Holy Hour now. Oh, you saw it? Yeah, you came into Mass the other day, I was finishing. And I was like, oh, I should have done this earlier because people are going to get confused that it's going to be benediction. It was just the Holy Hour. Bishop Sheen recommends this. And if you want to do that, it's beautiful. You're going to be able to do exposition of the sacrament, so you can ask your pastor, Father, can I have a private Holy Hour? You can. You expose the Blessed Sacrament, you do the hours from the Blessed Sacrament, and then you expose the Blessed Sacrament, and that's it. You don't have to do benediction. It's amazing. It's something that gets kids all over the world, that makes the Eucharist more relevant, that helps a lot, and it's sacramental life, okay? Anyway, so what is a sacrament? Sacraments are not magical rituals, okay? You're going to be amazed how people use them. In the sacramental practice, there is always a risk that it could be understood as magic. This happens when an independent efficacy is given to the rite apart from the behavior and the experience of the faithful. Okay, so you celebrate, you are in the state of mortal sin, but you want to be a sponsor for this kid, and you can't, because you're living with somebody and you're not married by the church and you're in the state of mortal sin, and you cannot be a sponsor. But I want to be his sponsor because the mother is my best friend. It's not magic, dude. The baptism is not apart from your ethical life, from your moral life. Your moral life is a disaster. Of course, I don't tell them that, but it is a disaster. There's a huge gap between living in the state of mortal sin and sponsoring a kid for baptism. That's treating baptism as magic. Okay, you just go like this, like the Lion King, and raise the kid, and then he becomes Simba. No, it doesn't work that way. Jeremy is gonna do that. Hakuna Matata. But you see that a lot, right? Oh, but you're depriving my. One girl told me once, you're depriving my kid from baptism. No, you are doing it for not choosing him a proper sponsor. The sponsor you're choosing for this poor kid cannot go to communion, cannot go to confession, cannot do anything in the church because he has chosen or she has chosen not to do that. Well, fine. But don't disconnect the two because they have to be connected. Okay? So this is a little bit, this is a little bit difficult, but in the Sierras in Mexico where we have the drug dealers, I mean, they come back from selling drugs, from killing people, and they show up in church for the first communion of their kids. Yeah. So the priests from over there, they were like, I don't know what to do. Because they show up with their big guns, so I have no choice. I cannot tell them, I'm not gonna give communion to your kid because you are a drug dealer and you don't relinquish from that. No, but they don't. And that's a disconnection. It's like magic. What were you gonna say?
So this mother who wanted to have her child baptized, but we couldn't find a sponsor, can you offer to say, I'll find a sponsor for you?
Yes, yeah. So the community will step up and be the sponsor of that child. We'll see that later. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a very good practice. Uh-huh. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. More attention is given to the adequate celebration of the rites than the fellowship of Christ that the sacrament celebrates. We get that a lot in the United States. Oh, Father didn't put his hands like this. And what if he had a piece of the Eucharist and he dropped it? The hosts that are made in the United States that are super high quality, they very seldom give you pieces when you grab them. They're very, very good. I mean, if you were in Italy, maybe it will be a different story. But in the United States, the altar bread is like super duper high quality, first class, 5-star altar bread that you get in the church. And the validity of the Mass is not this. It's that you came and opened up to the love and the forgiveness of Christ, and you listened to the Word, and you felt saved once again for the risen Christ, just like St. Paul on the road to Damascus, and you got up and went to communion and you united yourself with Him. No. You should see how priests make fun of one another. We do. So when we get them, I find myself in the middle. I do say Mass like a member of the Opus Dei. I know that, but I'm also towards the left and the rest of stuff. And for me, it's like I try to, and it's very difficult as a celebrant. You will see that, You have to take them when they come in for the celebration of the sacrament, and then you have to celebrate the rites very well. You have to execute them really well. Not like like a play, but you have to celebrate them really well. But help people to feel what they're celebrating. Be there. Okay, it's super important that whenever you baptize the kid and you say in the name of the Father and of the Son they know that they are establishing a relationship with God. They know that this consecration with the holy oil, it's real, and that they will, things like that. It's difficult. It's kind of difficult. Not for it not to be magic, okay? Because you have to balance it out. It's not only, it's not only the preaching of the kerygma, but it's also that the celebration should make that evident to them, okay? So, and you have plenty of examples. You have seen people that are like a very good celebrant, Bishop Wester. Fantastic. Bishop Wester is a fantastic celebrant. I mean, he would preach perfect, and do all the gestures perfect, and, the pace of his celebrations were perfect, and, sometimes and it's the same, sometimes I thought, is really feeling it, or is he faking it? He's too perfect. But I lived with him, so I know how he is. He's too perfect. He's a very good celebrant. I don't know your pastors, but he was a very, very good celebrant. Another good celebrant, Cardinal Wuerl from Washington, D.C. Good. A bad celebrant, the nuncio. Ay, Dios mío. Because he's so nervous because he's French and he's speaking English and he gets lost sometimes, in that. He's not very good. He does what he needs to do, but he doesn't have that. But Cardinal Wuerl is very, very, very good. You see them on EWTN all the time, right? And he's very good. Archbishop Lord from Baltimore is very good. Cardinal George, but he's in heaven now, from Chicago. He was very, very good too. Yeah. But the one that I enjoy the most is Wuerl. I mean, he's not faking it, because I've seen him live, in his real life, and he's like that all the time. He takes his time. He acknowledges the presence of God, tries you to help you to do the same. He's not super complicated in the way he says things, but he says them really well, almost poetic and good. What, are you picturing this guy celebrating a baptism?
I'm trying to.
Over time, you get that over time, you know. Uh-huh. You have to trust God, that the one who is doing it is Him, and it will work, okay? So sacraments are understood as magic when an autonomous efficacy is attributed to the ritual ceremony which is celebrated in order to produce a desired effect. So you say, well, if I do this, this happens. You're already killing the sacrament. Okay? So no. Freud calls this the omnipotence of ideas. It is a process in which man attributes an unquestionable efficacy to that which has been thoroughly thought out and effectively presented. So if I planned it well and I executed well, it is going to happen. Witchcraft does that. Yeah? And it's not sacramental. Okay? So we have to be very careful not to get there. The essence of magic lacks a connection between the ritual action, the ethical behavior, the defining life experiences, the purpose in life, and other relationships of the individual. What I'm telling you about the sponsors who are in the state of mortal sin and baptism. You just do the baptism, Father. Just do your job. But my job is to show you the disconnect. That's my job. And you have to let them know you're looking for a sponsor for your kid, not for a new friend. I mean, he cannot or she cannot be your friend, but if he is a good Christian person, you want him or her to be the sponsor of your kid. Why? Because he can look up for that person for a good example. And that's what you want, inspiration. Okay? He will get a good piece of advice and a nice present at Christmas. Okay? Yes.
So when you're choosing this, when you're finding out about this sponsor at a baptism, is your responsibility to explore? I mean, you know this person, here's the sponsor, and so then you say, well, is this person a practicing Catholic? You ask that question?
The Code of Canon Law says that they have to be Catholics in good standing. You know what that means. If they are single, they have to be really single, not into a relationship. And if they are married, they have to be really married in the church. And you know, it says good standing.
And so it's your responsibility, and it'll be our responsibility
To find that out.
to find that out.
Most likely like a baptism prep class.
We find that out in our parish because we're a little bit, you know, heavy on that. And if you don't show me a wedding certificate in the church, you are so not sponsoring anybody.
You make them show them the certificate.
Oh, of course.
Oh,
Yeah.
what if they're from Mexico or something like that?
Oh, there's.
You don't
there's
just
way-
take their word.
No. I take their paper. I hate to be like that. My heart aches when I do that. But I have to do that because I have to ensure that when my kid comes for communion, and I do the whole 9 yards, and I put the meter, and the kid comes and kneels, and I give him the body of Christ, and the deacon comes, he gives him the blood of Christ, and the picture, and grandma cries, but I want to make sure that when the sponsor comes next, he or she will receive communion too. It will be so shameful, right? That they wouldn't, you know. So it's difficult. It's very difficult. Okay.
Father, I have
See.
a question though. On Greg's point, it's our responsibility to understand that, but what I was told is the pastor's call. If he says that child is to be baptized, then that child gets baptized.
And you will learn how to use your own discretion to know that, you know, sometimes there are things that are too complicated, things that cannot be resolved, people that are people of goodwill, and it's not that they are doing it on purpose. All of that will come to you, you know, and you will go discuss all of this with Father Langes later. This is. Yeah, okay. Because you have to be pastoral. You have to make sure as much as you can, but you have to be pastoral. You have to try to help the person. You don't know how many marriages I have had over the fact that people want to be sponsors and they say, Father, I know I have to be married in the church, and this is God telling me to do it. And they do it. Yeah. And I was like, thanks God for backing me up in this. The essence of magic, okay. The most serious risk sacraments face in the present is that they may be celebrated as magical rituals, and this is very difficult. When this happens, the sacraments become a source of deceit. This comes from a defective interpretation of the official doctrine of the Church, which states that a sacrament is valid when the matter and form are present, and the sacrament is celebrated in accordance with the norms of the Church. Oh, well, you Catholics teach that, whenever we celebrate a sacrament, if it is done in the proper way, then it happens. Yeah, that's the affirmation of efficacy, but it's not magic. It doesn't work like that. You have the proper matter. What is the matter for baptism?
Water.
The water. What is the form? I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the
Trinitarian.
Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Okay? That's the form. Okay? What is the matter for confession? The sins of the sinner. What is the form? I absolve you from all your sins in the name of the Father. What is the matter for the Eucharist? Bread and wine. What is the form? The words of consecration. Okay? So, so on and so forth. What is the matter for a wedding? The consent of the spouses. What is the form? The acceptance. Okay? You just witness it. Okay? So if that is given and is correct, well, the sacrament will take place. But it's not magic. It's not. You cannot reduce it to that, because then it will be like magic. Okay? On the other hand, I get this kid the other day from Guadalajara. Grandma, grandpa, tios, tias, cousins, from Guadalajara, everybody is here. Looking their best, by the way. I was like, oh, these Mexicans know how to dress. No cholo outfits in church, I was so happy. And then the family of the bride is there, but there's one piece of paperwork lacking. And then, the mother of the groom comes and says, Father, I know it's my mistake. I forgot to bring it with me. I don't know what to do. I'm so ashamed. How are you going to marry these kids? Because I don't have the baptismal certificate. This is going to be a disaster. What do I do? But then you see the disposition of the whole family. Do you call off the wedding? No. A sign that everything is ready is the way they disposed everything. Everybody from town came. They flew from Mexico. Everybody from here, the other half of the family were there. They were celebrating that wedding already in advance. Even when they showed up to the church, they were so happy. They were like, are they faking it? Are they lying to you? No, they're not. You have to be pastoral and say, let's do the wedding. You give them the paperwork date. She did. So, wow, the life of the sacraments is a little bit complicated. Yeah.
So did you hold the paperwork in abeyance until you got the paperwork?
Yeah, and they do. I mean, I got a fax the next Monday, and good. You knew by the way they did it. You knew it. They were not faking it. They really wanted to get married. Huh? So, anyway, there is also a short understanding of the ex opere operato. I'm sure you guys already saw this in your LEM program, which means that the sacrament work from their own work. Some are persuaded that the sacramental ritual, faithfully executed, produces its saving and sanctifying effect automatically. No. We already talked about grace. We already talked about how it works. If you don't bring the bottle with the mud inside to the waterfall, it's not going to fill it up. It's not going to clean it. It's not going to overflow it. You have to bring it. If you show it to the waterfall, nothing is going to happen. So a sacrament needs to be the end of a process of conversion, the end of a process of discernment, the end of a process of fellowship with Christ. So what do we do as ministers? We foster the process. Okay? We make sure that at least the process is beginning to take place. Like the atheist couple. I don't know, Father. I just want my kid to start somewhere. That's a very good beginning of a process, isn't it? So that's what you do. Okay? You try to get the faithful to that process, or at least verify that the process is beginning to take place. And then the sacraments will have a real meaning. Okay? Yes, I can baptize the kid, and the kid will be baptized, and it will work, and it will become a child of God and everything. With what consequences? Well, that the kid will never go back to Mass. He will have canonical obligations that he will never be able to fulfill. The poor kid is going to be in the state of mortal sin his whole life. You see? There's no process. The sacrament is going to take me to nowhere. You know, it's going to be effective, of course. But what am I going to do? Okay? So, and you will see that a lot. That disconnect is out there a lot.
Well, don't you have to make the parents turn Catholic first so they can raise them the way?
Could be that way, or if the sponsors are very close and they are going to be responsible for the Catholic education of the kid, you can do it too. That's what happened with the atheist couple. They got a very good couple of sponsors. You know, we know that they come to your church. We know that they will be nearby our child. Good. Okay. Because it will respond for the kid.
So what if somebody wants to get married, one is Catholic, one is Lutheran, but the Catholic insists they do it in his church? That's okay?
It's a lack of form. We don't.
You don't do that. They both have to be Catholic.
As a Catholic, you don't get married if a Catholic minister is not present there and do the wedding.
Right. So,
Yeah.
but you could still marry a Lutheran too.
See,
That's-
and you can do that in a mixed marriage. You get your dispensation from the bishop, and then you do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm gonna
So
do that
same
in
with an
2
atheist.
weeks. In 2 weeks, I'm gonna do the convalidation of a Jewish girl and a Catholic boy. They're already married. They married in the Jewish faith, and they're my friends. And I talked to them. I said, would you like to have your marriage acknowledged by the church? And they both move in that world. Half of their friends are Catholic, half of our friends are Jew, and they said, yes, let's do it.
What about an atheist and a Catholic?
You can.
You can
A
say
non-baptized and a Catholic. All you have to do is instruct the non-Catholic party to know that these are the obligations that the person is acquiring. Faithful, the rest of it.
Raise the children.
For the children, Catholic, and all that. Yeah. And you can do that. The bishop gives you permission. Yeah. Oh yeah. This has derived in a sacramental practice to which more attention is given to the faithful execution of the rites over the other aspects of the Christian experience. And there has to be an experience. This takes us to the question we would like to address. How should we understand the sacraments and celebrate them in order to avoid the risk of presented above? A sacrament is a symbol. In a basic sense, a symbol is the expression of a human experience. Symbols are composed by 2 elements. 1, an experience that roots itself in the subconscious of the individual. And the external expression of such experience is the second element. So something big, important, deep happens in my life, and then I need to express it somehow. That makes a symbol. In fact, the root of the word symbol from the Greek means that you put things together. Okay? So you see this super beautiful girl, she sees you, you start having feelings for this person, and then you show up to her doorstep with a rose. But actually that's a dead plant. But it's a symbol of love. Because the experience is being expressed in that rose. It becomes a symbol. The 2 elements are coming together. Okay? Is the rose meaningful? Of course it is. Why? Because it symbolizes that relationship. Okay? Sacraments are symbols. Okay? And they symbolize our relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And so that we need to be very careful about that, okay? That they are symbolic realities, not only rituals, not only religious practices. The connection between the experience and its expression consists of correspondence, not only likeness, as it is in the metaphor. So It's so strong that when you grab the rose that you kept in a book, and then you see it, it will take you straight back to that moment when you received it. And it's going to give you the same joy it gave you when you received it. Right? Okay, so I have my rose. It came from the coffin of one of my best friends. Her daughter, at the end of the funeral, I guess she saw me so sad and she grabbed the rose and gave it to me. Beautiful white rose. And I kept it in a box and it's intact. One of those roses it's in my office. And people when I grab it and hey, you leave my rose. That's my friend. That's my little friend. Drew and I used to minister to her together. And we were Veronica, and she passed away, Veronica from New York, and she will remind us till the very end that she lived in Salt Lake City, but she was born in New York. Okay, Veronica from New York, yeah. It's, I cannot but smile when I see my rose. Okay, it's a symbol. It has become a symbol. Okay, and it's beautiful. Sacraments are symbols in that regard. So it's a true correspondence. You grab it and it takes you there. It's not only likeness. Oh, this reminds me of, that's not a symbol. Okay? That's a metaphor. It works. It's not a symbol. The symbol has to take you there. Okay? So, Rocio always remembering the first roses that she got from.
I do.
What's your favorite color
reminded
for
him.
roses?
Pardon?
Mine is yellow. My favorite color is yellow. What is your favorite color for
Well,
roses?
there's nothing as pretty as a red rose, but probably a peach rose.
Those are rare. Those are rare and difficult to maintain. You have to be very
That
good at
salmon
them. Yeah.
color.
Yeah.
I know,
Now I know.
it's my favorite.
Okay.
Now
No,
you
mine are
after all
yellow.
these years.
There's nothing as beautiful as a red rose.
And being a pastor of a church, of a low-budget church, with nobody to take care of the flowers, now I know how important and difficult our flowers are and expensive. Yeah, I take care of them. I change the water and I make sure that it doesn't go bad. And, 'cause they're not mine. They belong to God, and I have to take care of them. There cannot be a symbol without an experience. Period. If you don't have an experience, a symbol will be empty. Of course, there's no. Of course, an experience without an expression is not a symbol. You can have a nice experience, but if there's not an expression of it, it doesn't become a symbol. It remains an experience. Beautiful, but it never goes to that level. The Christian faith is made up of deep and strong experiences. The experience of the love of God for us and our love for Him. The experience of the love we receive from our neighbor and our love for him. These are the deepest experiences of human life. The depth and importance of such experiences demand an expression. You feel loved by God. Greg is not, because he was having problems with that the other day. You get soul and on the way to Damascus, and Christ comes and reveals himself to him as the risen Lord. Calls out his name, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? He knows it's a true revelation like Yahweh with Isaiah. And then he knows that he's not worthy of this, but yet Christ came to encounter him and gave him mission. He feels loved and forgiven by God. So his whole life, his ministry, his letters, his preaching, his whole being becomes a symbol. Well, guess what? This is what happens with holy waters, my friends. Yeah, because when you celebrate the other sacraments for the people of God, you celebrate them with water or the different elements and the form, which are the words that the church is going to give you to say and say them properly. So, but when you minister, guess who is the symbol? You are the symbol. You are the symbol of the presence of God in the life of your faithful, of your parishioners. So you become the symbol. You are for them a sacrament that walks and talks. Okay? And you will see that. Deacon so-and-so told me that. You're being a symbol. You have to be super careful to be a good symbol. But it's amazing. It's beautiful because we are being chosen. What is the last phrase that the bishop is going to tell you when he accepts you as candidate?